The room held its breath. Every camera lens, every microphone, every eye fixed on the tense exchange unfolding before them. Judge Neomi Rao, known for his pointed questions and unflinching demeanor, leaned forward. His interruption cut through the air like a blade, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the calm that Jasmine Crockett had been cultivating mid-sentence. The words came fast, accusatory, designed to unsettle. The crowd, accustomed to political theatre, paused, suspended in disbelief. Crockett's opening remarks, carefully measured and poised, had been interrupted mid-flow. Rao's voice carried authority, his tone laced with the unmistakable flavor of challenge. The murmurs of the audience stilled. Even the moderator, momentarily caught off guard, leaned back in silent acknowledgement of the escalating tension. Cameras pivoted instantly, capturing every twitch, every subtle shift in expression. Rao's gaze was piercing, an attempt to dominate the conversation before it could fully breathe. Crockett's initial reaction was almost imperceptible, a slight narrowing of the eyes, the subtle adjustment of posture. But in that stillness, the room sensed an undercurrent. She didn't flinch, didn't falter. Her presence radiated calm authority, the kind that demanded respect without uttering a word. The contrast was stark. Rao, aggressive and calculating, Crockett, composed and unwavering. Every second stretched, the silence amplifying the stakes, turning the moment into a charged cinematic tableau. Whispers rippled through the audience. The press row leaned forward, pens poised, recording the moment that would inevitably circulate beyond the walls. Social media notifications were already buzzing in real time, capturing the raw electricity of a confrontation that felt larger than a single panel. This wasn't merely a question and answer. It was a clash of poise versus provocation, intellect versus intimidation. And then, as if time slowed to spotlight her next move, Crockett's gaze met Rao's. In that heartbeat, the world sensed what was coming, a response that would not only reclaim control but also redefine the narrative. The hush wasn't just silence. It was anticipation, the collective understanding that something unforgettable was about to happen. But what Jasmine said next didn't just answer the question. It left the entire room speechless. The panel had been convened to tackle pressing questions of policy and civic oversight, a discussion meant to illuminate the complexities of governance. Yet from the moment Judge Neomi Rao spoke, it became clear that this was no ordinary exchange. His sharp tone, his carefully chosen words, framed Crockett not merely as a participant, but as a test of competence. Every syllable seemed designed to probe, to unsettle, to measure her authority under scrutiny. The audience felt it immediately. This was a moment charged with more than policy debate. It was a judgment, a performance, a proving ground. Crockett, standing at the center of this high-stakes environment, became the focal point of attention. Every question Rao lobbed was like a gauntlet thrown at her feet, her knowledge, her composure, her very credibility under examination. He questioned her understanding of complex legal frameworks, her interpretation of civic oversight responsibilities, and even the subtle nuances of policy implementation. Each interruption carried an undertone, a silent insinuation that she was less prepared, less informed, less capable than expected. The weight of that insinuation lingered in the air like a storm cloud over a sunlit courtroom. Yet as the questioning intensified, something remarkable happened. Crockett's expression remained controlled, her tone measured. Beneath the surface, her mind worked with relentless precision, cataloging arguments, anticipating every potential misstep. She understood the stakes. This was not just about a single question or a single panel. It was about representation, about the courage to stand unshaken when the system and those in power sought to belittle or dismiss her. In every subtle nod, every calculated pause, she radiated quiet resolve, an inner strength that seemed to gather momentum with each pointed challenge. The tension was palpable. Observers could sense the gendered dynamics at play, a woman of color standing firm against an establishment figure whose interruptions were as much about optics as they were about inquiry. The room, dense with anticipation, absorbed each moment like a charged wire. Colleagues and journalists exchanged glances, recognizing that this exchange was emblematic of a broader struggle, a battle over voice, authority, and credibility that transcended the immediate policy issues on the table. Every question Rao asked was a probe. Every silence he imposed a challenge. Yet Crockett's mastery lay in her ability to transform scrutiny into control, to let the weight of the moment sharpen her focus rather than fracture it. She did not rush. She did not react impulsively. Her calm, deliberate composure amplified the contrast between aggression and measured authority, drawing the audience's attention to a force of intellect and dignity quietly asserting itself. And then, as the room collectively held its breath, she paused, a deliberate, purposeful pause that carried the full weight of anticipation. Every eye, every camera lens, every recording device fixed on her, waiting for the response that would either satisfy, deflect, or redefine the entire exchange. She paused. And in that pause, every eye in the room fixed on her, Judge Neomi Rao had long cultivated a reputation that balanced respect with a strategic, sometimes unyielding edge. To many, she was a figure of authority, a voice of reason within the judiciary, a master of procedure and protocol. Yet beneath the polished public persona lay a calculated precision, a methodical approach to asserting control in any room she occupied. Whether in a courtroom, a congressional hearing, or a policy forum, Rao had mastered the art of commanding attention, not simply through her knowledge but through timing, tone, and the subtle intimidation that accompanied her interruptions. Throughout her career, Rao's style had been clear. Questions were never mere inquiries, they were tools. Each pointed interjection, each sharp follow-up was designed to measure, to unsettle, to press against the edges of another's composure. Her colleagues knew her ability to control a room, to manage optics, and to turn even the most mundane procedural moment into a display of dominance. Past hearings offered countless examples, witnesses hesitating mid-sentence, experts faltering under rapid-fire questioning, and policy proponents struggling to recover from the unexpected curveballs she deployed with seemingly effortless authority. These were not accidents. They were tactical maneuvers, carefully calibrated to maintain her position at the center of the narrative. Rao's command extended beyond immediate scrutiny. She understood the broader power of perception, the cameras, the media, the recording devices capturing every second for potential dissemination. A well-timed interruption, a precise rhetorical challenge, could elevate her influence while subtly diminishing the credibility of others. Reports of her prior engagements illustrated a consistent pattern. Rao often orchestrated situations where her poise and preparation contrasted starkly with the unease of those she questioned. Whether intentionally or through habit, she had become synonymous with a style that blurred inquiry with authority, observation with dominance. Yet the same strategist who radiated calm in public often relied on private mechanisms of influence to reinforce her position. Colleagues recounted instances where Rao had preemptively shaped narratives, guided aides to manage messaging, or leveraged procedural rules to corner dissenting voices before they could fully articulate their arguments. This duality, public composure paired with private maneuvering, created a persona that seemed invincible, a figure whose intellectual rigor and social acuity combined to maintain control at nearly every turn. But within this careful architecture lay vulnerabilities, subtle cracks invisible to most observers. The very reliance on intimidation, the unrelenting drive to assert dominance made Rao predictable in her approach. Her methodical interruptions, her sharp rhetorical probes, were tools honed over years, yet they followed a familiar rhythm, a pattern that, once recognized, could be countered. Those who encountered her unflinching style repeatedly noted that while she could unsettle many, she struggled against individuals who possessed equal measures of poise, intellect, and strategic patience. It was within this calculated environment that Jasmine Crockett would soon enter, unknowingly preparing to challenge not just the questions posed, but the very framework of Rao's authority. Rao had yet to face someone who could absorb the pressure of pointed interrogation, the subtle insinuations embedded in each query, and emerge not just unshaken, but commanding the moral and intellectual high ground. Crockett's reputation for resilience, clarity, and precise articulation made her a rare opponent, one whose presence threatened to expose the limitations behind Rao's carefully maintained composure. The contrast between Rao's public poise and the private reliance on control created tension long before any words were spoken. It was a persona that demanded respect, yes, but also invited challenge. a test of whether the established methods of dominance could withstand an unexpected, unwavering force. Every strategy, every calculated interruption, every subtle insinuation was about to meet scrutiny in a way it had not encountered before. But Rao's usual authority was about to collide with a force she hadn't faced before. Jasmine Crockett's unshakable truth. Jasmine Crockett's story was not written in the comfortable corridors of privilege, but in the unyielding streets of perseverance and purpose. Born into a world where voices like hers were often dismissed or muted, she learned early the weight of expectation and the necessity of resilience. From her first encounters with systemic inequities to the moments when she was underestimated, simply because of the color of her skin and the cadence of her voice, Crockett's life became a masterclass in transforming obstacles into fuel for determination. Her early years were defined by curiosity, discipline, and a quiet defiance. School hallways whispered doubt, peers questioned her capabilities, and societal norms suggested limits she refused to acknowledge. She absorbed every lesson, academic, social, and moral, and converted them into tools. Long nights of study, mentoring from those who recognized her potential, and relentless self-education laid the foundation for a mind as sharp as it was strategic. Each challenge, whether minor or monumental, reinforced a principle she would carry into public life. Knowledge combined with preparation was a shield against intimidation. As Crockett's professional journey unfolded, the pattern of adversity became more pronounced. The legal field, with its rigid hierarchies and centuries-old biases, became her proving ground. Courtrooms where her arguments were scrutinized more for who she was than for the merit of her points, hearings where interruptions were routine and dismissals frequent, and high-profile cases that tested not only intellect but resolve. All these experiences honed her ability to remain composed under pressure. Her legal practice was more than a career. It was a battlefield where every motion, every question, every challenge became an opportunity to refine poise, precision, and persuasive clarity. In the halls of Congress, Crockett's journey only intensified. Committees, panels, and debates placed her under the microscope, with colleagues and critics alike testing her credibility at every turn. Gender and racial dynamics amplified the scrutiny. Moments that could have been discouraging became instead platforms to demonstrate resilience. Where others might flinch, Crockett stood firm. Where voices sought to interrupt or diminish her contributions, she responded with measured confidence. Each encounter reinforced a principle that would define her political identity. Integrity and preparation could outmatch arrogance and intimidation. Her reputation as a fearless voice was not the product of theatrics or desire for viral moments. It was earned through consistent advocacy and relentless pursuit of justice. From representing underrepresented communities to championing legislation that confronted inequities head-on, Crockett developed a public persona rooted in action rather than posturing. Her colleagues recognized her meticulous research, her capacity to anticipate opposing arguments, and her unwavering commitment to principle. For those who underestimated her, the realization often came too late. Crockett's calm authority could dismantle assumptions as effectively as any formal policy or legal argument. Crockett's preparation extended beyond knowledge and advocacy. It was psychological. Years of navigating environments designed to test her patience, credibility, and composure instilled an almost tactical awareness. She learned to read a room, to anticipate challenges, to respond not reactively but strategically. Interruptions, sharp questioning, attempts to unsettle, she had faced them all countless times, and each encounter reinforced a singular truth. Poise under pressure amplified both credibility and influence. The combination of intellectual rigor, legal expertise, and lived experience created a uniquely formidable presence. Crockett was not simply a participant in political debate. She was a force whose preparation transformed scrutiny into opportunity. Her history of navigating systemic challenges, standing firm amid repeated interruptions, and asserting authority in spaces where few like her had gone before, meant that every high-pressure encounter only polished her capacity to lead. All of this built to a singular point of inevitability. Crockett's life, every struggle, every late-night preparation, Every confrontation with bias had cultivated a readiness few could match. She carried the weight of representation, not as a burden, but as a mantle of responsibility and clarity. Her reputation as a poised, formidable, and principled figure was no accident. It was the sum of countless hours of deliberate preparation, experience, and unwavering dedication to truth and justice. And when the cameras rolled, all her years of preparation converged into one defining moment. The room was electric, charged with anticipation, as Judge Neomi Rao leaned forward, her gaze sharp and uncompromising. Every word she spoke carried the weight of authority, a carefully measured cadence designed to unsettle, to probe, to challenge. "Ms. Crockett," she began, voice steady yet cutting, "can you clarify how your proposed approach addresses the structural inconsistencies we've discussed? Because on the surface it appears incomplete." The insinuation hung in the air like a storm cloud, and a ripple of murmurs passed through the audience, a collective intake of breath. Every eye followed Crockett, waiting for her reaction, expecting hesitation, expecting falter. Rao pressed further, her questioning tactical, each sentence a subtle trap. She circled her arguments like a predator, highlighting perceived gaps, emphasizing potential missteps, framing Crockett as unprepared despite the evidence of her meticulous research. The moderator interjected, attempting to regain control, but the tension was too thick. The audience could sense the imbalance, the calculated weight of Rao's interruptions designed to dominate the exchange. Yet Crockett's posture remained unwavering, her hands resting lightly on the desk, her eyes meeting Rao's without a hint of intimidation. Every question Rao posed seemed sharper than the last. "Are you suggesting, then, that your plan can withstand scrutiny when traditional protocols have failed repeatedly?" she asked, her tone implying incredulity. The crowd shifted, some leaning forward in curiosity, others murmuring under their breath, all drawn into the electric tug-of-war. Crockett did not answer immediately. She allowed the pause to linger, each second amplifying the suspense. The silence was deafening, a strategic counterpoint to Rao's rapid-fire interrogation. This was not a room for casual observation. It was a crucible, and Crockett had been forged in its heat countless times before. Every interruption, every challenge, every attempt to undermine her credibility had been anticipated, and she remained unshaken. The audience sensed it. The contrast between Rao's escalating urgency and Crockett's composed calm created a tension that was almost tangible, a visual and auditory rhythm of dominance versus dignity. Social media feeds, if live-streamed, would have been ablaze with speculation and awe, the hashtags forming before the words had even landed. Rao's eyes flickered with subtle signs of frustration, a micro-expression betrayed by the slightest tightening of her jaw. She attempted to regain control, leaning forward and punctuating her questions with pointed emphasis. Yet Crockett's calm was magnetic. It drew attention, shifted the energy, and created a space where authority was measured not by volume or aggression, but by clarity, knowledge, and composure. The moderator's voice grew strained, trying to steer the exchange, but the moment had transcended ordinary decorum. It had become a psychological chess match, with the room collectively holding its breath. And then, just as Rao prepared to escalate once more, Crockett inhaled deeply, her eyes sweeping the room, taking in the anticipation, the weight of expectation, and the rhythm of challenge. She leaned slightly forward, her voice steady but filled with unmistakable authority, and in that moment the atmosphere shifted. Every murmured doubt, every calculated interruption was poised to be addressed, not with aggression but with undeniable piercing precision. The audience leaned in closer, sensing the pivot, aware that what came next would define the exchange, redefine perceptions, and leave a mark that no interruption could erase. And then, she spoke. 7 words that upended the entire exchange. The room fell into a suspended hush as Crockett's words began to weave through the tension, calm yet razor-sharp. She started softly, almost conversationally, acknowledging Rao's question with a nod, a recognition of the challenge posed, but there was no deference in her tone, only clarity. "Judge Rao," she began, measured and deliberate, "the concerns you raise are valid in theory, but they misrepresent the practical realities we face." Her voice was steady, Each syllable weighted with preparation and lived experience, each pause strategic, allowing the words to resonate fully before continuing. Crockett's argument unfolded like a masterful performance, every point surgical. She dissected Rao's assumptions one by one, illustrating the contradictions in her line of questioning with precise examples and documented evidence. Policies Rao claimed were insurmountable, she demonstrated, had feasible solutions rooted in precedent and reason. Each rebuttal was deliberate, paced to maximize impact, and the audience responded instinctively. Gasps rippled through the chamber, eyes widened in disbelief, some nodding subtly, others clutching pens as they realized the magnitude of Crockett's mastery in the room. The deliberate pauses were a masterstroke. Crockett allowed Rao's interruptions to hang in the air, then refocused the narrative, turning each attempt to dominate into a moment that highlighted Rao's overreach. The subtle shifts in Rao's composure became more noticeable. A tightened jaw, a slightly raised brow, the fleeting hesitation before her next question. Crockett's poise acted as a mirror, reflecting confidence and expertise back onto the room, amplifying the tension and the audience's anticipation. The power dynamics had shifted. Quiet authority was eclipsing ostentation. Social media, if live-streamed, would have erupted instantly. In imagined posts, hashtags like #Crockett Clapback, #Judge Exposed, and #Viral Debate 2025 trended within seconds. Tweets poured in, snippets of her precise phrasing, GIFs capturing the pivotal pauses, memes celebrating her unwavering calm juxtaposed against Rao's faltering composure. Comments read, "Absolute shutdown." Crockett doesn't just answer, she educates. This isn't a debate. It's a masterclass in composure and logic. Every platform seemed to echo the collective realization a moment was unfolding that would be dissected, celebrated, and shared relentlessly. The audience in the chamber leaned forward, rapt. Every word Crockett spoke seemed to resonate not only intellectually but emotionally, striking a chord that transcended the technical debate. She highlighted not only flaws in the logic, but the human element of policy, implications for real people, communities, and fairness. Her voice, unwavering, emphasized both intellect and empathy, creating a dual impact that left those present in awe. Murmurs turned into applause in bursts, hands rising tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, as if the room itself acknowledged the shift in authority. Rao attempted to regain control, interjecting with pointed questions and subtle emphasis, yet each interruption was met with a composed, almost serene deflection. Crockett neither raised her voice nor allowed frustration to creep into her tone. Instead, she reframed the questions, exposing the gaps and inconsistencies without derision, allowing the audience to witness the dismantling of a narrative built on intimidation. Her method was elegant. Each rebuttal was both a shield and a scalpel, cutting through rhetoric while maintaining the moral high ground. As her points mounted, the energy in the room transformed. The initial tension gave way to a kind of collective awe, a recognition of the intellectual and ethical rigor Crockett brought to the confrontation. The moderator struggled to interject. The audience leaned in, cameras focused tightly, and the moment seemed to stretch, each second amplifying the stakes. Social media chatter became imagined commentary. She's not just shutting him down, she's rewriting the rules of engagement. Clips of her precise hand gestures, the calm steadiness of her gaze, and the rhythm of her reasoning went viral within moments. The crescendo built naturally. Crockett's tone grew subtly firmer, her phrasing more pointed yet always controlled. She juxtaposed Rao's claims against the reality of lived experience and the evidence she had meticulously prepared. Each syllable landed with precision. The audience erupted in soft building applause, then louder bursts, as if each insight landed a silent, undeniable victory. Rao's composure began to crack further, her questions slightly rushed, her interruptions less commanding, and the unspoken acknowledgement in the room was unmistakable. The narrative had shifted irrevocably. Finally, Crockett leaned slightly forward, her voice steady, her eyes scanning the room, her timing perfect. 7 seconds passed like an eternity as she allowed her previous points to settle. Then, with quiet finality, she delivered her closing line, a phrase so precise, so definitive, that it wrapped together every point. every rebuttal and every ounce of composure into a single, unforgettable moment. The room collectively exhaled, some audibly, some silently, but all felt the weight and clarity of her argument. Rao's shoulders slumped fractionally, a visible marker of defeat without spectacle. The imagined social media eruption mirrored the room. Tweets, clips, and GIFs spread instantaneously. Analysts dissected the logic, educators highlighted her reasoning, and activists celebrated the embodiment of calm strength in the face of intimidation. Memes juxtaposed Rao's increasingly flustered expressions with Crockett's serene mastery. Comments flooded in. "This is how leadership looks. Calm, clear, unshakable." Crockett just redefined debate etiquette for 2025. The virtual applause echoed the real one, amplifying her influence far beyond the room. In that final moment, Crockett did more than respond. She commanded respect, reshaped perception, and left a lasting imprint on everyone watching. Her mastery of timing, logic, and composure created an indelible cinematic moment, a testament to preparation, courage, and intellect prevailing over interruption and intimidation. She had turned the tables not with volume or aggression, but with the quiet, precise force of undeniable truth. And with that final line, the room and the world watching understood this was not just a victory in a debate. It was a demonstration of mastery, poise, and the transformative power of standing firm in one's convictions. The moment went viral before she even left the room. The instant Crockett's words left the courtroom, the digital world erupted. Hashtags like Jaunt Crockett Clapback and Rao Exposed began trending within minutes, trending not just nationally but internationally as viewers shared clips of the exchange on every platform imaginable. Short snippets of her measured yet devastating responses flooded Twitter, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. Each pause, each carefully crafted rebuttal became a standalone moment, gifified and replayed endlessly. "This isn't just a response," one viral post read. "It's a masterclass in poise and strategy." Memes juxtaposed Crockett's calm intensity with Rao's increasingly flustered expressions, creating a cultural touchpoint that audiences couldn't ignore. Late-night commentators couldn't resist dissecting the moment. Panels on CNN, MSNBC, and even online political commentary channels replayed the exchange, debating the sharpness of Crockett's logic and the subtle unraveling of Rao's composure. Influential journalists highlighted how this was more than a debate or hearing. It was a demonstration of how dignity and preparation could overshadow intimidation. Social media influencers and activists amplified these analyses, creating compilations that condensed Crockett's composure into shareable, repeatable, and viral content. Each clip, each replay reinforced the narrative, a hero standing unshakable in the face of authority, refusing to yield to ego or aggression. The ripple effects reached beyond digital platforms. Within the political sphere, colleagues and allies praised Crockett's restraint and clarity. Statements flooded in from progressive leaders and advocacy organizations lauding her courage and poise, emphasizing the quiet power of restraint over confrontation. Meanwhile, Rao's supporters scrambled to reframe the narrative, issuing statements highlighting technical points she claimed were misunderstood, but the momentum had already shifted. Crockett's mastery of rhetoric and calm composure had set a new standard for public discourse, making her approach a reference point for professionals, students, and viewers alike. Discussion threads and editorial columns began exploring the larger societal implications of the encounter. Analysts highlighted the gendered power dynamics at play, noting how Crockett's ability to remain composed challenged long-standing expectations of how women, particularly women of color, are supposed to respond under pressure. Conversations emerged about representation in political and legal spaces, emphasizing that authority does not belong exclusively to those willing to dominate or intimidate. Crockett's actions became a touchstone for measured strength, illustrating that resilience, intellect, and clarity could upend traditional hierarchies without resorting to aggression. Fans and viewers from across the country began creating their own content, reflecting on how Crockett's composure resonated with their personal experiences. Clips of her exchange were paired with motivational captions. "Calm speaks louder than anger. Truth doesn't need volume, and strength is in restraint." The moment became more than a viral clip. It was a cultural conversation about courage, integrity, and standing firm in one's convictions. Public forums buzzed with debates, educators used the exchange in law and civics classes, and influencers framed it as an example of modern political heroism. In living rooms, offices, and online communities, the impact was palpable. Each replay reinforced the message. Crockett had demonstrated that preparation, knowledge, and unwavering confidence could dismantle intimidation and assert authority without confrontation. Rao's reputation, while still intact in some circles, had been irrevocably reframed by this singular, unforgettable moment. People across ideological lines acknowledged the elegance of Crockett's approach, even as they disagreed with her policy positions. The spectacle had become universal, an example of dignity prevailing over ego. Amid all the public reaction, the anticipation for Crockett's next move grew. Interviews, podcasts, and editorials speculated on how she would frame her own reflection on the encounter. Audiences were eager to hear her perspective, to understand the mindset and preparation that allowed such a precise, composed response to dominate a high-pressure situation. The moment had not just been captured on camera, it had become a cultural flashpoint, sparking conversations about gender, race, leadership, and the power of measured strength in public life. But what Jasmine revealed afterward, off-camera, uncovered an even deeper truth about this encounter. In the days following the hearing, Crockett took a moment to step back and reflect publicly. In interviews and statements, she reframed what had been perceived as a tense, combative encounter into a lesson on the enduring power of dignity and restraint. She spoke of leadership not as domination or loudness, but as the ability to remain grounded, articulate, and unwavering in the face of provocation. Her message was simple yet profound. Authority is earned through integrity and mastery, not intimidation. Every carefully chosen word, every measured pause in that hearing, was not just a rebuttal. It was an example of what principled leadership looks like when tested under pressure. Crockett emphasized that true strength does not require aggression. In recounting the exchange with Judge Rao, she highlighted that her calmness, preparation, and commitment to truth allowed her to respond effectively without escalating conflict. She framed her composure not as a weapon, but as a tool for clarity, enabling her to cut through assumptions and expose the flaws in the arguments presented. For Crockett, this was never about humiliating another person. It was about demonstrating that intellect, focus, and poise can create outcomes far more powerful than confrontation. The moral was clear. Courage is measured not by volume or theatrics, but by steadfastness, knowledge, and ethical conviction. Her reflections quickly resonated with a broad audience. Across social media, discussions arose not merely about the moment itself, but about the values it symbolized. Commentators, activists, and ordinary viewers recognized the broader implications. Crockett had exemplified how fairness, accountability, and moral courage could prevail even in high-pressure arenas, dominated by authority figures accustomed to intimidation. Her approach became a teaching moment, inspiring young leaders, students, and professionals to consider how restraint and clarity can transform a challenge into an opportunity for lasting impact. Crockett also connected the lesson to universal themes of bravery and justice. She reminded audiences that courage is not always loud, that fairness sometimes demands listening and timing as much as speech, and that accountability is strongest when paired with self-control. By framing her own experience as an instructive example, she elevated the moment beyond political theater. It became a blueprint for ethical engagement, a demonstration that values matter more than ego, and that reasoned, compassionate responses can dismantle even the most calculated attempts at dominance. Her integrity shone not only in what she said, but in how she said it. Crockett consistently rejected the narrative of personal vindication, choosing instead to focus on the principle at stake. She made it clear that the exchange was not a personal victory, but a reaffirmation of what leadership and service should look like in a democratic society, measured, intelligent, and principled. The emphasis on collective responsibility, how truth and fairness benefit the public, transformed the story from a singular confrontation into a universal call for dignity and accountability in all spheres of Live audiences responded with admiration and reflection. Viral clips of Crockett's remarks circulated alongside her interviews, often captioned with reminders that restraint and preparation outmatch impulsive force. Opinion pieces explored the implications for political culture, gender dynamics, and leadership ethics, framing Crockett's composure as a model of modern civic responsibility. The dialogue she inspired extended beyond partisan lines, emphasizing that bravery, fairness, and clarity are values every community can aspire to uphold. Through her reflection, Crockett distilled the moment into an enduring moral. Leadership is measured not by the ability to overpower, but by the courage to act ethically, speak truth, and maintain composure under pressure. She reminded viewers that these qualities, not dominance, aggression, or spectacle, define genuine strength. The confrontation, once tense and fraught with uncertainty, had become a symbol of principled leadership, ethical courage, and the quiet power of restraint. And just when people thought the story was over, her final words reignited the conversation. The room that had once held its breath in tense anticipation now echoed with the quiet triumph of clarity and composure. That initial silence, the pause before Crockett spoke, was no longer a moment of uncertainty. It had become a testament to her unwavering strength. Every camera, every eye, every listener had witnessed not just a rebuttal but a masterclass in dignity under pressure. The tension that Judge Neomi Rao had tried to wield as a weapon had been transformed into a stage for measured brilliance. Judge Neomi Rao attacks Jasmine Crockett. Seconds later, she's shut down. The title now carried the weight of truth. It wasn't about humiliation for its own sake. It was about exposing arrogance, challenging assumptions, and proving that intellect and integrity prevail when the stakes are highest. Crockett's restraint, her calm, her deliberate articulation, all of it resonated far beyond the hearing room, reinforcing the principle that strength is quiet, precise, and principled. This moment is not just a story, it's a call to action. Share it, amplify it. Let the world witness the power of thoughtful, courageous leadership. Subscribe to stay informed and inspired by voices that challenge injustice, expose hypocrisy, and embody the values we all deserve to see in public life. Engage in conversations about accountability, fairness, and truth, and encourage others to elevate integrity over spectacle. As the cameras followed her departure, Crockett walked with her head high, her presence commanding respect without a word. Behind her, Judge Rao shifted uncomfortably, the imbalance of the encounter unmistakable. That lingering image, a hero leaving with poise, the challenger unsettled, cemented the moment in memory. It is a reminder that courage, clarity, and calmness leave the strongest impression long after the echoes of conflict have faded.